After losing her job and her faith, Mary Carter bought a forgotten cabin by a quiet creek, just $500 for a new beginning. But the first night, her dog started barking at the floor, and that's when she heard it, a heartbeat, echoing from deep underground. When she dug beneath the house, she found an iron door marked Heartline Project. What she uncovered wasn't a secret of science. It was the heartbeat of something divine, a living soul beneath the earth, reaching out for love. And when she touched it, the mountain went silent, as if even God was listening. Chapter 1. The house by the creek. The sky hung low over Willow Creek, a soft gray that blurred the line between the clouds and the mist rising from the pines. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the forest still dripped, as if reluctant to let go of its sorrow. Mary Thompson stepped out of the rusted pickup, boots sinking into the wet earth, and gazed at the cabin that was now hers. It leaned slightly to one side, as though exhausted from holding itself up for decades. The roof sagged in the middle, its wooden shingles darkened by years of rain and moss. The windows were small, square eyes clouded by dust. Yet to Mary, after months of couch hopping and sleeping in her car, it looked like hope that had taken physical form. Mary was 42, with sun-browned skin and hands roughened by years of carpentry. Her hair, a chestnut brown streaked with silver, was tied in a loose braid that had survived the long drive from Denver. She was tall but slender, in that worn-down way that comes from working more than eating, her posture both tired and stubbornly upright. She had once been proud, the kind of woman who could rebuild a staircase alone or carry a beam without asking for help. But after the sawmill closed, after the rent piled up, that pride had been stripped down to something quieter, endurance. A bark broke the silence. Buddy, her golden retriever, bounded from the truck bed and splashed into a puddle, tail wagging in wide, joyful sweeps. He was 8 years old, a rescue she had taken in when he was still half-starved and skittish from the shelter. His fur had once been patchy, but now it shimmered gold under the weak sun, his eyes the warm amber of worn maple wood. Buddy was large for his breed, broad-shouldered and heavy, but he moved with an almost gentle carefulness, as if he understood fragility. "Looks like it's just us again, boy," Mary murmured, patting his head. His tongue lolled in reply, his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and something older, the kind of musk that clings to abandoned places. Dust motes drifted in the air, turning slow circles in the shafts of light that fell through cracked window panes. The main room was small but sturdy. A fireplace built of river stones, shelves sagging under the weight of forgotten books, and a table that looked as if someone had once carved equations into its surface with a knife. Mary traced a fingertip over the scratches. They formed symbols she didn't recognize, circles within lines, small notches beside arrows. Her brow furrowed, but she shrugged it off, probably a bored owner with strange hobbies. She unpacked quietly, a kettle, 2 cups, a sleeping bag, a few cans of soup. The cabin didn't have electricity anymore, but she could make do. She'd made do with less. By late afternoon, the forest had begun to hum. That was what struck her. The sound. Not the birds or the wind, but something deeper, a faint vibration she could feel in her ribs. Buddy noticed it first. His ears pricked, and he gave a low whine. He went to the door, nose pressed to the crack beneath it, tail rigid. "What is it?" she asked softly. He didn't bark, only turned to look at her with that strange stillness dogs have when they're listening to something humans can't. The silence stretched, then a faint sound rippled through the air, like water moving under stone, slow and rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Mary rubbed her arms, suddenly cold. "Just the creek," she whispered, as if to convince herself. That night, she lit a fire and sat with Buddy curled beside her. The crackle of the flames was comforting, and for the first time in months, she felt something close to safety. She reached into her coat pocket and took out a photo, her younger self and her ex-husband, Tom, both smiling beside a half-built porch. He'd left 6 years ago, tired of her obsession with fixing broken things, as he called it. The house, the dog, the life. He'd walked away from it all. She hadn't blamed him then. Maybe she did now. Buddy shifted, lifting his head suddenly, eyes fixed on the window. The night outside was thick and dark, the forest pressed up against the glass. Mary followed his gaze. Nothing. But then, faintly, she saw it, a glimmer, like blue light moving beneath the ground. It wasn't the reflection of the fire, nor lightning. It was coming from below. She rose, heart pounding. The glow pulsed once, then again, in perfect rhythm. Soft, steady, alive. Buddy whined and took a cautious step forward, tail lowered. Mary pressed her hand to the cold glass, staring down at the earth that seemed to breathe beneath her feet. And in that moment, she thought she heard it again. The low hum from the afternoon, now deeper, slower, more deliberate, like the earth itself was murmuring words she couldn't yet understand. The light flickered out. Silence fell. Only the creek outside went on whispering, as if nothing had happened. Buddy lay back down, though his eyes stayed open. Mary sat beside him, unsure whether she had imagined the whole thing. But when she leaned her head against the wall, she felt it, faint, rhythmic, a heartbeat pulsing through the wood. Not hers, not his, something else, something below. Chapter 2. The voices beneath the earth. The storm came without warning, thick sheets of rain hammering against the cabin roof like 1,000 small fists. Mary woke to the sound of thunder rolling through the valley, Buddy's growl low and steady beside her bed. The air smelled of wet pine and iron, and for a moment she thought the vibrations she felt were only the echoes of the storm. But when she sat up, the tremor continued, faint, rhythmic, the same pulse she had felt through the walls days before. She pulled on her jacket, the fabric stiff from dried rain, and stepped out into the night. The forest was a blur of shadows, the trees bending under the wind. The creek had swelled, churning dark and wild, and each flash of lightning revealed its restless surface. Buddy barked once and sprinted toward the back of the cabin, paws splashing through mud. "Buddy, wait!" she called, but he was already gone, guided by something unseen. She grabbed a flashlight and followed, her boots slipping in the soaked earth. Behind the cabin, where the land dipped into a shallow hollow, Buddy was digging furiously beneath the sagging deck. Mud flew in all directions, his fur plastered to his sides, his tail rigid with focus. "Hey! Stop that!" Mary shouted over the wind. But when she shone the light on the ground, she froze. Beneath the layer of soil, something metallic glinted back at her, a smooth, curved surface, almost like iron. Buddy whined, pawing at it, his claws scraping a dull clang from the metal. Mary crouched and brushed away the dirt with her hands. The rain made everything slippery, but she uncovered just enough to see what it was. A rusted door, its surface engraved with faded letters that barely caught the light. She leaned closer. Heartline Project. The words sent a chill up her spine. They were carved deep, deliberate. "What the hell?" she whispered. Buddy pressed his head against her shoulder, trembling. The lock was ancient and corroded, but the hinges looked solid. It didn't seem like a cellar door. It was too heavy, too sealed. "We're not opening this tonight," she murmured, half to Buddy, half to herself. Still, curiosity prickled under her skin like static. She marked the spot with a lantern before heading back inside. But even after drying off and climbing into bed, sleep wouldn't come. Every 30 seconds, the ground gave a faint pulse, steady as breathing. By morning, the rain had thinned to mist. Mary went to the nearest town, Ridgewell, a sleepy cluster of buildings that seemed half asleep even at noon. She needed tools, and maybe answers. The general store smelled of dust and motor oil, its shelves lined with canned goods and old magazines. Behind the counter stood Earl Bennett, a man in his late 50s, broad-shouldered but stooped from years of labor. His beard was graying and uneven, his eyes pale blue and sharp as river ice. "You must be the one who bought the old Kent place," he said, squinting at her. His voice was gravelly, the kind that carried old cigarettes and long silences. Mary nodded. "That obvious?" Earl chuckled. "Only place out there with a roof that leaks and a road that bites back." He scanned her face a moment, as if measuring her resolve. "You fixing it up?" "Trying to," she replied, setting a small list on the counter. A crowbar, new hinges, oil, a lamp. He looked over the items, his expression tightening slightly. "What's that for? You find something down there?" Mary hesitated. "Just a door, metal, buried under the house." The man's brows furrowed. "You sure it's a door?" "I think so. It says something like, Heartline Project." Earl's hand froze halfway to the cash register. "You shouldn't mess with that," he muttered. "My uncle worked with Dr. Kent back in the 70s. Crazy man. Said he was digging into things the earth didn't want uncovered." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "They found something under that creek. Some kind of machine, or maybe not a machine at all. When it started humming, folks up the valley said their clocks stopped. The state came in, shut it down. Kent disappeared." Mary frowned. You expect me to believe that? He shrugged, eyes narrowing. Believe what you want, but if you start hearing the ground talk back, don't say nobody warned you. That night, back at the cabin, the mist clung low and the air hummed faintly, as though charged. She oiled the hinges of the metal door, brushed away the rest of the mud, and wedged the crowbar into the seam. The lock gave a protesting groan, the sound echoing through the earth like a sigh. Buddy whimpered, pawing at her sleeve. "It's all right, boy," she whispered, though her voice shook. When the door finally gave way, a wave of cold air swept over them, heavy, stale, metallic. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, carved directly into the rock. The walls glistened faintly, wet with condensation. She shone the flashlight ahead, the beam swallowed by darkness. "Stay close," she said softly. Buddy followed, ears flattened. The further they descended, the clearer the sound became, a pulse slow and deep, echoing up through the stone. It wasn't mechanical, it was organic. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a cavern lined with stone arches and cables long since corroded. Scattered tools lay rusted on tables. In the far corner, something massive loomed. A glass cylinder cracked down one side, half filled with murky water. Floating inside were fragments of copper wiring and what looked disturbingly like bone. Mary's breath caught. "Oh my God," Buddy growled, the fur on his neck bristling. The hum beneath the floor intensified, syncing perfectly with her heartbeat. The flashlight flickered once, twice, then went out. For a long moment, there was only darkness and the rhythmic thud that seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the walls, the floor, even her own chest. And then, in the pitch-black silence, something whispered her name, Mary. She froze. The voice wasn't hers. It wasn't human. Buddy barked once, loud and terrified, and then the heartbeat stopped. Chapter 3. The Secret of Heartline. Morning light filtered weakly through the cracks in the cabin walls, painting thin golden lines across the dusty floor. Mary woke in the armchair by the cold fireplace, her clothes still damp, her hands trembling slightly. She remembered the whisper, the way her name had rolled through the darkness like breath against her ear, and she wasn't sure if she'd dreamed it or not. Buddy lay curled near her feet, his fur bristled, his tail twitching even in sleep. The storm had passed, but the house still felt alive, humming faintly beneath the floorboards. She forced herself to go back down the stone steps that morning. Fear, she'd learned, didn't disappear by waiting for daylight. It had to be walked through, step by step. Buddy followed close, his nose twitching, the faint light of her lantern reflecting in his amber eyes. The chamber below was colder now, the air sharp with the scent of metal and wet stone. The glass cylinder she'd seen before was clearer in daylight. The bone she thought she'd seen was only the twisted framework of an old support beam. Still, the unease remained. On a table nearby, beneath a sheet of cracked glass, lay a leather-bound notebook, the pages swollen from moisture, but intact. The front cover was burned, but a name was still legible, Dr. Harold Kent. Mary sat at the table and opened it carefully. The handwriting was precise, angular, and oddly elegant for a man of science. The first pages were technical, sketches of subterranean maps, graphs of vibration frequencies, notations of something called resonant emotion theory. But later entries grew stranger, almost poetic. "The earth is not dead matter," Kent had written. "It breathes through its veins of stone. These are the heart lines, networks of mineral consciousness. They respond to emotion, to fear, to love. It listens." Mary turned the page. Another line caught her eye. Subject Beta, golden retriever, male, 5 years old. Emotional resonance stabilizes output. The creature's loyalty creates balance. She exhaled softly. A dog. He had used his dog. Her gaze fell to Buddy, who sat watching her, head tilted, as if he too wanted to understand. "You'd have been his stabilizer," she whispered. "Like you are mine." Further in the notebook, the tone shifted, more desperate. Kent described the vibrations intensifying beyond control, the system feeding on human energy. Then one final scrawl, shaky and uneven. "If synchronization breaks, the heart will seek another to listen." A loud thump echoed above them, something shifting in the cabin. Buddy barked sharply. Mary's pulse quickened. She closed the notebook and climbed back up, her boots slipping slightly on the damp steps. Upstairs, the sound came again, not from the house, but from outside. Through the window, she saw someone standing by the edge of the creek. It was Sarah Coleman, her nearest neighbor, A woman in her late 50s with wiry gray hair pulled into a bun and a face weathered by sun and solitude. Sarah had a reputation in Ridgewell as a recluse. People said she'd lost her husband to a mining accident and had since kept to herself, tending her goats and fixing fences alone. She wore a thick wool coat and rubber boots, her gloved hands clutching a walking stick. Mary stepped outside. "Morning, Sarah," she called, forcing calm into her voice. Sarah turned, her pale eyes narrow and alert. "You've been busy," she said, her voice low and gravelly. "Saw lights down here last night. Blue ones. Strange things." Mary hesitated. "Just the storm," she lied. Sarah's gaze flicked toward the cabin. "Storms don't hum, Mary, and the creek," she pointed with her stick. "The fish have all gone. Haven't seen that happen since Kent's time." Mary frowned. "You knew him?" Sarah gave a bitter laugh. "Knew of him. My husband worked as security for his project before the state shut it down. Said Kent was trying to wake the mountain. Said it listened back." She leaned closer. "If you found what he left, you'd best leave it be. That thing doesn't forget." Mary opened her mouth to respond, but Buddy growled softly, ears pricked. The ground trembled. Just once, a deep, shuddering breath from below. The creek rippled without wind. Sarah's face went pale. "You feel that?" Mary nodded. "It's been happening for days." "Then it's starting again," Sarah whispered, the heart stirring. She turned away, clutching her coat tighter. "Lock your doors, Mary Thompson. Curiosity took Kent. It'll take you too if you listen too long." When she was gone, the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Mary stood for a long time by the water, Buddy pressed against her leg. Beneath the surface, faint light shimmered again, softer now, rhythmic, like breathing. That night, she couldn't sleep. The journal lay open on the table beside her lantern, the words swimming through her mind. Heartlines, emotional resonance, stabilizer. It all sounded like madness, yet every tremor she felt made it harder to dismiss. Around midnight, Buddy began to whine. He paced the room, then ran to the trapdoor leading to the basement, scratching at it. "Not tonight," Mary said, rubbing her eyes. But the ground shivered again, this time hard enough to rattle the window panes. Dishes clinked on the counter. Buddy barked sharply, hackles raised. Then, from beneath the floor, came the low, throbbing hum, louder now, insistent, pulsing every few seconds like a desperate heartbeat. Mary grabbed the lantern and opened the trapdoor. Buddy bolted down ahead of her. The moment her boots hit the bottom step, a blinding glow filled the cavern. The crystal structure, what she had thought was just stone, now shone with veins of light, spreading through its surface like living veins beneath translucent skin. It pulsed violently, flashes of red and blue racing through it in chaotic rhythm. Buddy barked, but the sound was swallowed by the hum. Mary stepped closer, shielding her eyes. The glow brightened until the air itself seemed to vibrate. The notebook's words echoed in her head. "If synchronization breaks, the heart will seek another to listen." And then, for the first time, the light seemed to respond to her, slowing, shifting, steadying as she approached. "Easy," she whispered, not sure if she was speaking to the crystal or to herself. "It's all right." Buddy pressed against her leg, trembling but silent. The glow dimmed slightly, its pulse syncing with her own racing heartbeat. For a moment, the chaos softened into rhythm, but then the ground cracked beneath her feet, a thin line of blue light cutting across the stone floor like a wound opening. The heartbeat faltered, then roared back, deeper, louder, alive. Chapter 4. When the heart grew angry, by dusk, the wind had begun to scream through the valley. The pines swayed in violent rhythm, and Willow Creek swelled until it spilled over its banks, carrying branches and stones downstream in a wild current. Mary stood at the window, clutching the edge of the table, her knuckles white. The sky had turned an unnatural color, green fading to black, the kind of hue that warned of storms that remembered their own violence. Buddy paced restlessly, tail low, whining at the sound of thunder that rolled not just from the heavens, but from beneath the earth itself. The cabin shook, dust fell from the rafters, and the lantern flame fluttered wildly. Then came the sound she dreaded, that low hum from the ground, now rising, throbbing in waves that rattled the floorboards. She knew it wasn't just the storm, it was the heart line. Something below was awake again. She grabbed her coat, the same worn one she'd had since the sawmill days, and reached for the flashlight. "Stay close, Buddy," she said, though he was already at her side. The trapdoor creaked open under her hand, and a gust of cold, damp air rushed upward, carrying the scent of metal and ozone. They descended together. The walls of the tunnel gleamed with a faint, unnatural red light that pulsed like veins through stone. The massive crystal in the cavern, once pale blue, now burned crimson, its glow staining the air. It pulsed violently, the rhythm erratic and furious. Each throb made the ground quake. Buddy barked, but the sound was swallowed by the roar that seemed to come from the very heart of the mountain. "Easy," Mary whispered, as if soothing a frightened animal. But it wasn't fear that filled the chamber now. It was pain. She could feel it, not as sound, but as emotion pressing against her chest, seeping into her mind. Images flickered behind her eyes. Dark caverns, storms beneath the soil, shapes of light struggling to hold together. The earth wasn't angry, it was afraid. A violent tremor threw her to her knees. Stones fell from the ceiling, splashing into the pools of water at her feet. Buddy yelped as part of the tunnel wall collapsed near the entrance, trapping him between two jagged rocks. "Buddy!" she screamed, scrambling to her feet. He was pinned, his front paw bleeding, his eyes wide with terror. She tried to move the rocks, but they were too heavy. The red glow brightened, searing the chamber in molten color. The hum turned into a deep, shuddering moan, as though the entire mountain cried out. "Please!" Mary shouted, her voice breaking. "Stop! You're hurting him!" Something in the crystal responded. Its rhythm faltered, stuttering like a heartbeat gasping for air. She pressed her hands against its surface, ignoring the heat that burned her palms. The moment her skin met the crystal, the world went silent. The light engulfed her. She couldn't see or hear, only feel. Fear, loneliness, endless isolation, echoing through stone. The heart wasn't a machine or a weapon. It was alive, ancient, and unbearably alone. For centuries it had slept, listening to the hum of life above, yearning for connection, for something to understand it. Kent had tried, and failed, and now it was reaching for her. Tears filled her eyes. "You're not alone," she whispered, voice trembling. "I'm here. We're here." Her hand shook, but she didn't pull away. "You're not a monster." Buddy whimpered softly, and she turned her head toward him. His gaze was locked on her, his breathing ragged but steady. She crawled closer, one hand still on the crystal, the other reaching for his fur. "We're okay," she murmured, pulling him into her arms. "You're safe now." A single tear slipped down her cheek and fell onto the crystal's surface. The reaction was immediate. The red hue began to fade, replaced by a deep, soothing blue that rippled outward like calm water. The vibration softened, slowing until it matched the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. The trembling stopped. The air grew still. Mary felt warmth spread through her chest, a quiet peace that didn't come from outside but from within. The crystal glowed faintly, no longer threatening but alive, calm, content. The mountain, the heartline, seemed to sigh. She looked around. The tunnel was no longer collapsing. The water had stilled, reflecting the soft azure glow. Buddy licked her hand, tail thumping weakly. "You're okay," she said, smiling through tears. "You're such a brave boy." They sat there for a long time, woman and dog, surrounded by the quiet pulse of the earth. She could feel it breathing again, slow and even, as if soothed back into sleep. Above them, the storm still raged, but it no longer felt threatening. The thunder sounded distant, like waves on a far shore. The air smelled clean, fresh, like rain on stone. Mary stood slowly, her body trembling with exhaustion. She gave the crystal one last look. "Rest," she whispered. "We'll take care of you." As she climbed back toward the surface, the glow followed faintly, tracing the walls like veins of living light before fading completely. When she and Buddy emerged into the cabin, dawn was breaking through the thinning storm clouds. The creek outside sparkled under the weak sun, its waters calm once more. Mary knelt beside Buddy, wrapping her arms around him. "We made it," she whispered. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't over. The mountain had quieted, not vanished. It had only listened. And somewhere far below, the heartline pulsed once, faint but sure. A gentle reminder that it was still alive and still waiting. Chapter 5. The Breath of Peace. The morning after the storm, Willow Creek lay wrapped in a soft silence that felt almost sacred. The air smelled of rains and pine sap. The sky washed clear to a pale blue that shimmered through the thinning mist. Mary stepped out onto the porch, barefoot, her flannel shirt hanging loosely around her shoulders. The boards were damp but warm beneath the first light of dawn. For a long while, she just stood there, breathing. The kind of breath that fills not only the lungs, but something deeper, a part of the soul that has forgotten how to rest. Buddy lay nearby, stretched across the porch, his golden fur glinting like honey in the sunlight. His paw was bandaged, though he barely seemed to notice it. He blinked slowly, head resting on his front legs, his eyes following the dance of light across the creek. Every so often his tail would thump once, lazily, as if in quiet approval of the calm. The cabin, battered and scarred from the storm, now seemed strangely alive, steadier somehow, as though the night's chaos had strengthened its bones. The faint hum beneath the floor, the one that had haunted her for weeks, was gone. Or rather, it wasn't gone, it had simply changed. Softer, slower. Not a warning now, but a rhythm, like the earth was breathing alongside them. Mary made coffee on the old stove and opened the windows. The smell of roasted beans mingled with the scent of wet soil. She set her journal on the table and began to write, something she hadn't done in months. The mountain listens. It remembers. The heart beneath Willow Creek doesn't crave worship or fear, only understanding. It needed someone to hear its loneliness, not to control it. Her handwriting trembled slightly, the ink spreading where her tears had fallen the night before. She smiled, though, when she added a final line. The heart of the earth lives not in stone or crystal, but in everything that loves. Later that morning, a familiar rumble approached from down the dirt road. Mary wiped her hands on her jeans and stepped outside just as a faded green pickup came to a stop. Earl Bennett climbed out, his beard still damp from the fog, his jacket zipped to the chin. His usual stoicism carried a faint edge of relief today. "Morning, Mary," he said, adjusting his cap. "Heard the storm hit bad out here. You all right?" She nodded, smiling. "We're fine. Lost a few shingles, that's all." Earl scratched his chin, squinting toward the creek. "Townfolk said they saw lights last night, blue ones, rolling like waves under the water. They thought it was lightning, but it wasn't raining then." Mary hesitated, then said softly, "It's calmer now. Whatever it was, it's at peace." He studied her face, lines deepening around his eyes. "Kent used to say that too," he muttered. "Said the mountain could feel sorrow." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "If he'd had someone like you here, maybe it wouldn't have ended the way it did." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it ended exactly how it needed to." Before leaving, Earl reached into his truck and pulled out a small toolbox. "Heard old man Wilkins down the road's been asking for someone who can fix woodwork. You should talk to him. His dock's about to fall into the creek." Mary's eyes lit up. "A job?" He nodded. "You got the hands for it, and the patience." Then, with a half-smile that looked almost foreign on his rugged face, he added, "Guess peace has a way of paying you back." By afternoon, Mary was standing on Wilkins's dock, patching splintered planks and sanding rough boards, while Buddy napped beside a pile of nails. The sunlight dappled through the branches, the creek murmuring softly. The old man himself, George Wilkins, watched from a rocking chair nearby. He was small and wiry, with thin white hair and eyes the color of faded denim. His hands shook slightly when he spoke, but his voice still held the slow drawl of someone who had spent his life talking to rivers and rain. "You've got good rhythm with that hammer," he said, "like you're keeping time with the water." Mary laughed gently. "Maybe it's keeping time with me." He nodded thoughtfully, gaze drifting to the creek. "You ever notice how it listens? Been living by this water 50 years, and I swear it answers sometimes. Just takes patience to hear it." Mary looked out at the current, smooth, glimmering, endless. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a faint blue flicker beneath the surface, like the echo of a memory. That evening, she and Buddy sat on the porch again. The forest glowed gold with sunset, the air filled with the slow song of cicadas. She wrote another line in her journal, the words flowing easier now. "Every heartbeat, no matter how small, adds to the music of the world." Buddy raised his head as if listening too. The creek shimmered under the rising moon, and once again the faint ripple of blue light appeared. Not bright, not frightening, just alive. The rhythm was gentle, syncing perfectly with her own pulse. She reached down to pat Buddy's head. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. His tail thumped once against the porch. She smiled, eyes glistening. Maybe the heart beneath the mountain wasn't gone. Maybe it was breathing through everything. Through the soil, through the river, through them. As the moon climbed higher, the creek shimmered brighter, and for a brief moment, Mary could have sworn she heard it, a quiet exhale carried by the wind, a sigh of relief. The mountain was sleeping again, and this time it was dreaming. Sometimes, miracles do not come as flashes of light or angelic voices from the sky. Sometimes, they whisper, through the rustle of trees, the rhythm of rain, or the quiet breath of the earth beneath our feet. Mary thought she had lost everything, her work, her home, her peace. But in that small wooden cabin by Willow Creek, she learned that God's miracles often wear humble faces. A loyal dog, a stranger's kindness, a second chance to begin again. The heart of the mountain, that ancient living pulse, was never just beneath the earth. It lives in each of us, beating softly when we choose love over fear, when we forgive, when we listen. And maybe that is how God speaks. Not in thunder, but in stillness. Not in power, but in peace. So, if you are watching this now, take a moment, listen. There might be a quiet miracle waiting in your life too, one that asks not to be seen, only to be believed. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Leave a comment below. Tell us what miracle means to you. And if you believe, as Mary did, that God's love can move even the mountains, subscribe, and let's keep these stories of faith and wonder alive together. May God bless you, and may peace find its way into your heart, just as it found its way back to hers.